Absolutely. And I'll tell you, learn something new every day. And I do want to get into the World Series of this year because it is very interesting. But I read that piece in the magazine section, I think it was last weekend, on Yogi Berra. You just mentioned Yogi and putting the finger out. I knew he played 17 years, and I saw him the first game he played at Shive Park in Philadelphia when he first came up. I was a youngster with my dad, and we went down to opening day, and he played right field that day. But the funny thing about it, he had 597 at-bats and struck out 12 times one season.
Wow.
He had 17 years of full-time, part-time play and only struck out 412 times in his entire career. I mean, today, can you imagine? We've got guys striking out 8 times in 3 games.
I know it. And you know, the amazing thing about that, I was not aware of that. I always knew that Joe DiMaggio had those kind of stats.
He struck out 12 times in the year. He hit the 56 straight games.
I think that I think he had fewer strikeouts than he had home runs in his career.
It was like 386 to 360
exactly
strikeouts,
right.
something like that.
Well, now to think about Yogi though, Yogi would swing at balls that were bouncing. I mean, he would hit a ball off a bounce. It was like the old drop kick. He would do that at the plate. He was one of the worst or best bad ball hitters around. He'd hit swing at balls over his head, and you'd ask him about it. And of course, Yogi's one of the finest men I've ever met. I love
sensational.
The guy. But he would just say, well, if I could reach it, why wouldn't I swing at it? But so to think that that's all he struck out, that's incredible. I didn't know that.
412 times his entire career, 17 years. And
what
the other thing was
that
he advocates, and of course I guess Joe Garagiola to the same, since he came up in the same neighborhood, he advocates that catcher should be small. He thinks that, and he's, when people stand next to Yogi, now let's face it, he's 84, 85 years old now, but even when he played, I mean, Yogi couldn't be more than, what would you say, 5'6", 5'7"?
Yeah, at the most.
At the most, and he's crouched down, and just in that. Let's get to this World Series. What do you think so far, Jeff? You've had a chance to evaluate it. What do you think?
Well, I thought it was going to be an unbelievable series because these are two of the best teams in baseball. I spend the summers at the Jersey Shore, and I watch the Phillies every night, the Yankees every night, and the Mets every night. I'm back and forth. My poor wife. We even have picture-in-picture, so I get 2 of the 3 at once. But the Phillies are some fun team to watch. They are really talented. And there's a personal tie there. Jason Worth, I don't know if you know, his grandfather is Ducky Schofield.
Yeah, I do.
Now, Ducky and I were teammates with the Dodgers. Now, Dickie, his uncle, was my shortstop with the Mets, and his stepdad, Dennis Worth, was a first baseman DH with the Yankees in the 80s. So there's a lot of connection there.
Like the Boone heritage.
Yeah, and the Bells.
Yeah, the Bells.
Buddy and David and Michael. Yeah, but I'll tell you what, I think these are about as 2 evenly matched teams as you are going to see or have seen in recent World Series. I mean, I know the Red Sox and the Yankees have been very evenly matched over the years, but obviously they're in the same league. They don't run together in the World Series, but these 2 teams are really good. They're exciting. They can play the inside game. The Phillies are even a better running team than the Yankees. They're good defensively. They've got good managers. They've got great personalities. They play hard. They never quit. I mean, they're really, both these teams, it's a shame that somebody's going to lose, but they're fun to watch.
No question they're the 2 best teams in baseball. You don't normally get this in any sport where the 2 best teams actually get to the final lap, and this is what happened this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. In a way, in my heart, I was thinking about the Dodgers, having been a former Dodger, and like to see Joe Torre and Don Mattingly come back to New York. But the more I thought about it, I said I have become a Philly fan because they play the game the way it's supposed to be played. So you find myself leaning toward the Phillies. But yeah,
you're a National Leaguer at heart, though.
Well, I spent all those early years in the National League, but then for about 18 years after that, I was in the American League. And I kept still pulling at times for the National League and the All-Star game, saying, "Wait a minute, I better sit here and figure out how many years I was in each place and be thoughtful of that." But yeah, they're a fun team to watch. And of course, the Yankees. I grew up in New Jersey, and I was not a Dodger fan. I was not a Yankee fan. I was a Giant fan because my dad was. Well, I hated the Yankees. The first day I pulled that Yankee pinstripe uniform on, I went, "Wow! Now I know what they're talking about." That, ironically, the day that I put the Yankee uniform on the first time was the day that Thurman Munson was buried. So, a lot went into that. But, after all those years being a Giant fan growing up and thinking Willie Mays the greatest player I've ever seen, and, of course, I've never changed my opinion on that, but to be a part of two of the greatest organizations in baseball with the Dodgers and the Yankees are something special. So, I look at the Yankees as, even though it's 20 years ago that I left there and came to the White Sox as a manager, you never quite get that out of your system, that's part of your family.
Well, I sort of was indoctrinated. My grandfather went to almost every Dodger game at Ebbets Field, and I went along with him from the time about 1944 on. And I grew up a Dodger fan all my life, and when they moved in 1958, that was pretty devastating to me. I couldn't believe that. I knew the Braves had moved out of Boston, but I never thought the Dodgers were going to move out of Brooklyn, but unfortunately they did. But the other point I'd bring up and see what your observation is, that this is the first time that a National League team has been better suited for the DH when they come back to a National League. I just think the Phillies, the Yankees really lose a lot when they have to make the change coming into a National League park. I think for the first time, a National League team has an advantage because they have more players for the DH situation.
Well, I've always felt that the National League had an advantage in postseason play anyway, because their pitchers have hit all year. I hated that. I never felt, I liked the DH. One of the reasons was, the way I played, I would have liked to have been a platoon player. I've gotten a chance to play defensively more often. But I liked the DH because I would rather see a former outstanding hitter or a current outstanding hitter still in the lineup and not see a pitcher hit. But by the same token, I agree with you. Charlie can use any number of combinations that he wants in that DH role. When Matt Stairs is in there, he's dangerous. And I agree with you. I always worried when I was managing an American League club that one of our pitchers was going to get hurt trying to hit when you haven't done it all year long. Then when you manage a National League team, your pitchers hit every day. You take batting practice. They take batting practice before the extra men hit on a given day. But in the American League, until interleague play, the American League pitchers never hit, unless you had one who was a standout hitter, and you might have him the kind of guy that you would have in your back pocket or on your lineup.
Billy Pierce. If you have Billy Pierce sitting there, you let him hit.
Yeah, some of those guys like to hit, and some of them, that was embarrassing. Some were better hitters than the 8th place hitter. Just ask me about it.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much. I agree with you 100% that these are the two best teams in baseball, and I think it's a long way from being over. I think we're going to see a lot of exciting baseball between now and game number 7 or whatever winds this thing up.
I think you're right. It'll be a big question mark tonight with 3-day rest with the big guy out there tonight.
CC, yeah. I was a little surprised. I thought he may change his mind when they won game number 3 last night. I just thought with the 2 games to 1 advantage, I thought he might go away from CC and let him have his normal rest, but he said Joe said he's not going to do that.
Well, he's just afraid. Who do you put in there? Jordan has not been in there in the basically in the postseason. It's tough.
Yeah.
So it's like Joe Torre says in his book. Zim said to him, "Don't mess around. Win it now."
Yeah.
And Billy Martin used to say, "Go all out today because it might rain tomorrow."
Jeff, I thank you on such short notice. I only called you this morning at about 11:15, and for you to set aside this much time for us, I really appreciate it. And I know that I'll see you. And we got 2 of the great ones right here down at Siesta Key, Jeff Torborg and
Tim
McCarver, right in their neighbors over there. And but I thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us for a short period of time.
Don, it's always a pleasure. Enjoy talking baseball anytime with you.
Take care, partner.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff.